Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 242, and I'm going to talk about my theory that Trump is in martyr mode. I have this memory of talking about Trump being in martyr mode, and I can't find it anywhere. I looked on social media. Maybe I put it in a post. I looked at my notes for previous episodes. I can't find it there. And I just don't have time to re-listen to the last 10 episodes of this podcast. I don't have the time or the energy. Um, and there are a couple things that are uh, happening in my life, which I will be sharing at some point in the next couple of months. Not my arbitration hearing, that's in February. And maybe I'll come out of the closet in terms of anonymity in February. Well, depends on how that goes. But yeah, something actually in my employment side of things. Unfortunately, it's not a professorship somewhere, but it'll be something that might make me even more busy than I am now. Anyway, that's for later. Dictionary.com defines martyr as a person who willingly suffers death rather than renounce their religion, or a person who is put to death or endures great suffering on behalf of any belief, principle, or cause. The third definition is a person who undergoes severe or constant suffering. So it's an interesting definition, right? Personally, I believe, and you should know already because you listen to this podcast, that religion is just a system of belief, right? Anything more than that, then you are thinking of a specific religion. That's why you're attaching more adjectives and descriptives to it. But broadly speaking, anything that a person believes is true, that's part of that person's religion. And so it is possible that Donald Trump loves America just that much, that he is willing to die for America, perhaps for his family, for his kids, his grandkids, for everyone's kids. So if that is something that he really believes in, that he wants to leave his mark for the country that he loves, then that is an incredibly powerful uh, mental state of mind, which is not easily deterred. In fact, it's impossible to deter that person. Now, I just want to put a little disclaimer here, only because I see a lot of believers, a lot of Christians sort of poking fun at people who see Donald Trump as a new Messiah or someone who is sent by God or something like this. Now, broadly speaking, conservative Christians believe that everything happens because it is the will of God. So, in a way, one might be able to say that. However, is he the model of righteousness? Is he someone who we should hold up as a role model to our children? I mean, get divorced a whole bunch of times, engage in coarse conversations, to have to dirty yourself by hanging out with politicians. Yeah, he's not perfect. Okay, I get that. But at the same time, even in harmonizing this with my own personal faith, God works in mysterious ways. All right. He used the country of Babylon to punish Israel. So, anything goes, right? So I don't judge anything, and I'm not to bring religion into it, but just I have mentioned religion, but not in the Christian sense, but in the fact that Trump really loves this country in his way. And he might mention God every once in a while, right? Like that God saved his life by making him turn his head at just the right time. So he may mention God, but I think that his driving passion, at least running for president and for what he's doing now, is his love of country. And that is something you just cannot ignore. You can't discount it. You can't say, that stuff is just drama. It just doesn't work. So he's not perfect. But even recently, I just started warming up to him. I mean, so before I was in the not Harris camp, right? So anyone but Harris, and then the Libertarian Party, went with someone who I don't think is really. I guess if I were to characterize it, he's left libertarian, not sort of center or right libertarian, and so he kind of turns me off. Just it seems like there's some inconsistency in some of the positions that he's taken. So I was sort of thinking about Trump. But then once he started putting that coalition together, like when I heard the story that he came out and called RFK, I said, "Oh, could he be putting together a coalition?" And so RFK came on board, Tulsi Gabbard came on board, Vivek started, supporting him. And I think Vivek might have been the first one, right? Because after he dropped out of the race, then he started supporting Trump. And then he got Elon Musk behind him, and then Elon Musk reached out to Ron Paul. And once Ron Paul's name is in the mix, I was sold. Okay, I was going to vote for Trump, right? Just because of the possibility that Ron Paul could whisper into Musk's ear, and Musk, who it seems to have a lot of influence on Trump, would be able to hopefully channel a lot of his energy in a much more free market focused way. So is Trump in martyr mode? Is he willing to put everything on the line, including his life, his livelihood, everything, to achieve something incredible for the country? And I've said this before, but over the last 8 years, even before when he would criticize Obama, I mean, horrible things have been done to him, right? I know that Obama is very vindictive, and his handlers and people who take care of his political image, they go hard after anyone who would undermine this perfect image that he tries to project. For example, he tapped all the phones at Associated Press, AP News, because they started running negative stories about him, right? And maybe that was the beginning of the end of, investigative journalism, but he tapped every single phone to try to put the kibosh on negative stories about him. I don't know, you can Google it, but it happened in his administration. And so if he's going to go after an entire press agency for running negative stories, well, here's a dude who's trying to show that he wasn't born in the United States, right? The whole birther movement was spearheaded by Trump. And so I could imagine that Obama would have come after him a little bit there. And then 2016, he wins the election. Instantly, everyone he had appointed in his cabinet, they turn on him. People lie to him. They deceive him. They give him a fake information in his own administration. And so many leftists have the gall, at the absolute gall, to call him Hitler. Like, if he was Hitler, would he have tolerated that? If he was Hitler, would he have allowed these people to continue to live? No, I don't think so. But anyway, so I'm not sure if I heard it in a Rogan podcast, but he basically said that he has nothing to lose, right? There's no reelection to worry about. Just this 4 years to do something incredible that has never been done before. And he's got a lot of energy. I saw a clip of his acceptance speech, and I think he really was seriously moved. I say it that way because the media always portrays him as just such a rotten guy. But I think he does have lots of feels. I think he does have lots of emotion. And getting reelected, is just an incredibly emotional thing for him. I mean, when he talked about looking at the Lincoln bedroom in the White House, I mean, he kept going on that Rogan had to interrupt him, right? But I think it's like he's 78. Uh, what else is he going to do in his life? Wouldn't it be awesome to leave a mark on this country to be remembered for a very long time? I feel like this is what's going through his mind. People have tried to kill him. They've dragged his name through the mud. They've harassed his family, his wife, I mean, his children, right? I mean, it's such a double standard, right? Like they'll say, "Oh, you can't go after the kids of that person because they're just children," but they'll go after his kids, you know. I think that's enough to make any parent really, really upset. Uh, and so, you know, after everything that he's gone through, their attempt to bankrupt him by this constant litigation, you know, it's something to witness. And a lot of people probably would have just given up, walked away, said, "Okay, fine, you won. You've beat me down. I'm not going to fight it any longer." You know, you could totally easily see him saying something like that. But he kept going. I'm sure he's hired people, experts to protect him now. At least I hope he has. Uh, I was listening to someone else. I forget who it was. I've been listening to so many different things, but while I'm doing other things, so I don't remember necessarily who I was listening to, but they pointed out that Trump's properties are underwater. Like the occupancy rates are very low, and so the buildings are losing money. The real estate properties that he has, they're losing money. And so there is a huge temptation for Trump to strong arm Powell or whoever replaces him to cut interest rates. So we're going to have to wait to see, right? Like, uh, I'm looking at certain cues, certain things that he might decide, which will show that he's not really in martyr mode, but it seems like it so far. I mean, to keep pressing after being shot at, uh, it says a lot to me anyway, about his character and what he's willing to lose by trying to do this. I mean, even the Republican Party is working against him. So it's a very interesting thing to see. Maybe that's what makes it so interesting. I don't know, but it is something remarkable, to say the least. Now, it's tradition that the people who helped you get elected will get posts in the new administration. And the thing is, he's surrounded himself with outsiders, right? The CEO of the UFC, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's a bio company CEO, author. You got the CEO of Twitter, right? You have all these outsiders helping you get elected. And if they get prominent positions in the cabinet and in his administration, I mean, you can see a lot of potential change, a lot of upset people, right? All the deep staters, all the bureaucrats, all of the government agencies who are under threat because he's going to cut government. You can kind of see the fear going through in the entirety of Washington, D.C. All of the military contractors, all the big pharma CEOs. I heard, you know, I think I mentioned the other day that they had an emergency meeting. What are we going to do? Right? Especially if RFK's in there and all of our big money-making drugs are going to get, you know, they're no longer mandated. All those vaccinations that we require little kids to get, which may or may not be causing a lot of these other childhood conditions. You know, I saw this it was the title. I only saw the title, but all of these childhood situations, like from autism to, I don't know, ADD, not a single Amish kid, right? That was the title. Not a single Amish kid is diagnosed with that. And obviously there are ways you can read between the lines. They are not diagnosed. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. They're just not diagnosed with that. Well, what it means is if they're not diagnosing them as autistic or somehow, you know, negatively affected by all of these diets and medical prescriptions by, you know, so-called modern society, well, they're mainstreaming them, right? So, like you go to any random public school and they're trying to mainstream, that is, put into classes of so-called normal kids, non-traditional kids, kids that have various disabilities that normally would prevent them from going to school and attending the same classes as other students. But in the Amish community, they are always mainstreaming everybody, and so that might be one way of looking at it, but nevertheless, um, you have this threat from RFK Jr. to the big pharma industry, right? The pharmaceutical industrial complex. So I just hope that he keeps that attitude and goes all the way, and that everyone who's with him sees that this is the chance to be remembered for a very, very long time, and to leave their mark into something that, no matter how you look at it, the market says it's a good thing, right? Reducing the size of government, restoring people their freedoms, getting away from a lot of the more recent radical leftist agenda. Also it's good to note that it was a wonderful feeling to see so many people living in America see through all of the lies of the left. Obviously, like 46% of America, give or take a few percentage points, still believe a lot of the rhetoric that comes out of the left. But I mean, if you just think about it just for a few moments, you'll realize that it can't be true, and they're straight up lies. I've talked about martyrs before. I've talked about people who are willing to die for a cause. In my Sun Tzu episode, episode 46, I talked about spies. Now, in that chapter, Sun Tzu says that you must not spare any expense to recruit spies because they're going to risk their lives, right? And so you have to make it worth their while to betray their people, to betray their countrymen. Um, and so he says prepare it. Having a reliable spy is much more valuable than having a large army, right? Because it's information that you really need in times of war. But I mentioned in that episode that Sun Tzu did not talk about the one single most dangerous spy, and that's the true believer, the person who is willing to die for the cause or for the war because he really believes in either the people or the principle or the goal that they are struggling for. I also mentioned George Washington and the Culper spy ring. George Washington Spies is a miniseries on, I forget, one of these other, what is it, like, uh, one of those TV show producing companies, okay? A A&E, or I don't know. Anyway, but George Washington's Turn, George Washington's Spies, that's the name of the series. A really great series. I mean, it's just fantastic. But it introduces you to Washington's spy ring. And one individual was anonymous. They didn't know. I thought that they found his diary 20 years ago, but it turns out that they found Robert Townsend's diary in 1930. Or actually, that's not what I lie. It's not it. They found references to a person and they found messages written by that person. And so they tried to track down through handwriting analysis who was that insider, who was that uh, person who had access to a lot of this primary information and was able to spy under the nose of the British. Turns out it was Robert Townsend, and it gave Washington the edge. That's how they were able to do that Christmas Eve raid on Trenton. That's how they knew that Cornwallis was low on supplies. All of this stuff. It's fantastic series to watch. But Robert Townsend refused to have his name anywhere. He refused any kind of payment, right? Because he didn't want any record. He was a Quaker, right? And so participating in the war was against his religion, but he believed in the revolution, what it was for. And so he was willing to risk everything. And that information that he gave to Washington, invaluable. So true believers are willing to die for the cause. right? Because of their faith in the cause. It's not that they're putting loyalty to a person, to an individual or a country. And so now you have to swallow a lot of hypocrisy for the sake of the country, or you have to swallow someone's lies because you're loyal to that person. No, no, no. You're loyal to a principle, right? And that's what makes them scary. Death does not scare them. It does not deter them. It doesn't discourage them because it's the principle. It's what they are fighting for. And perhaps for Trump, he really believes that America is exceptional or whatever you want to say, but that's his guiding principle. It's America for all of its warts and all of its negativity, the history, whatever. It's America that he is fighting for, right? That's what it seems to me. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should do the same thing. I mean, come on. It's America really is a unique country in a lot of ways. The history of freedom. Even in my seventh grade class, we're talking about how the local governments had to advertise their neighborhood to attract settlers. And the way that they were able to attract, Pennsylvania was the most successful colony population-wise. They were able to, get people to come to their state because of the freedom, the level of freedom that was in this state, right? So if you believe in that principle, it's a lot harder, right? It's tougher than any loyalty to a particular individual because people are flawed, but the principle is pure, right? And so it seems to me that Trump wants to leave that as his legacy. But cautionary note, what the big challenge for him is going to be is the debt crisis, right? $36 trillion. That is something that the United States will not be able to pay back. You can slash the government a little bit, but 2 trillion is still, it's not going to leave a dent, right? You really have to not only cut back, but you might have to default on the debt, right? Everyone gets 50 cents on a dollar. And so now that $36 trillion debt becomes 18 trillion. And now you start slashing the budget and you can bring that deficit down, get rid of the central bank like Andrew Jackson did, be like Calvin Coolidge and wipe out the debt and slash government spending so that there's no threat of bringing back a debt, right? Because that debt, you got to unwind it, right? You have to, you know, all the things that people bought with the borrowed money and that the banks are going to fail. Property values are going to crash. The value of treasury bond, long-term treasury bonds, those are going to crash. And so what are you going to do? Right? Does the government at that point, when everything starts crashing, banks start closing and going bankrupt, do you print? Right? Do you go into hyperinflation mode to try to save everything with worthless dollars, or do you let it crash? And so when that happens, and it's going to happen very soon, does he keep that martyr attitude? Right? Does he keep saying, look, this is we need this. We need the bankruptcies to happen to clear out all the malinvestment, the bad investment that has been made on cheap money. We have to let all of that fail and then, disappear. So then now we can start over. All the corruption will be reduced. In this whole time, you need a good spokesperson. You need someone out there every day sending the message, explaining to the American people what needs to be done, why it has to be this way. And also, when everything starts going badly, to help each other, to share the things that you have, right? Just to get by. In the same way that America exploded with generosity and charity for after the hurricanes in the South and North Carolina and Florida and all of those other places, in the same way that America just poured out its generosity, that's probably what we're going to need to do when everything comes crashing down, when all of the bankruptcies are, can't be papered over. That is, you can't print enough money to bail everything out. It's just not going to work. And so when that happens, I'm hoping that Trump stays the course, has someone who's explaining everything that's happening, like a Vivek Ramaswamy type person, not Alex Jones, but someone like Vivek Ramaswamy, to explain it to everyone, to answer everyone's questions, and to get everyone to remember what made America so great. It's generosity, it's respect for freedom, it's respect for other people, and that sort of open generosity, even to people that we don't know. And so hopefully that's what's going to happen. And Trump maintaining that martyr mode, right? It's sort of like God mode in politics, right? Like you are not going to compromise your mission, right? You are going to do it. So either you adapt or get out of my way. I hope he keeps that attitude. At least that's what I'm hoping so far. You know, who knows? But anyway, some food for thought, but it's at least indicative of just how much I'm hoping that things will be able to turn around, not just for his kids, but for my kids, for everybody's kids, for the future, and for the welfare of this country. That's it for this episode. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I'll talk to you next week.